I have learned something about Gloria today that I did not know before. I've known them for a few years now, but always in different settings than this. And what I'm about to say is not the purpose for these being here, but I've discovered that Gloria is a social butterfly. She loves all of you, all right? And she wants to pay attention to every one of you, and that is absolutely terrific. This butterfly has really nothing to do with her social skills. This has everything to do with Anthony, and you're going to hear more about that in just a few minutes. But what I do want to say is if you didn't take one of these when you came in, please take one of these when you leave. And if they're not there in the foyer, they're going to be over by the door where you enter in the reception area where you'll be enjoying some really good food in just a little while. I'm glad all of you have come today, and I'm glad for a variety of reasons. For those of you who were family, I'm glad that you're together, and you are a great family. You do teamwork better than most families I have ever seen. You did a terrific job in preparing for all this, but you are the best for each other on a day like today because you built so many memories together, and you are the best source of encouragement for each other. So thank you for doing that today. For those of you who are friends to this family, you were friends of Anthony's, you make a huge difference for them today, knowing that somebody else cared about somebody they care so much for. So thank you for taking the time and the effort to be here. I'm a pastor at your church, and before they moved to Texas, this is where Gloria and Anthony were attending. And I had the privilege of seeing them sitting out there in a pew alongside Angela Monroy. And so I have a bias, and that is I'm glad that God is here. He shows up every one of these services, whether it's in a church or at a gravesite or in the mountains or on the coast, he always shows up, and he does it because he made a promise over 4,000 years ago in the Old Testament when he made one very simple but profound statement. He said, I am, that means God, I am the God of all comfort. And in that simple statement, he told us two important things. Number one, God does not sugarcoat the truth. And what he tells us in that one sentence is life on planet Earth has pains and difficulties that you will go through. There are things that are going to happen where you will need comfort. And I want you to know, God says, in the midst of those, I haven't left you. I will be there for you. And I discovered that promise to be more true during COVID than I had ever known or anticipated before. We could not have services like this, or we were told anyway we couldn't have services like this during COVID. And so we had to get sometimes creative for families who said, I need to do something. We need closure of some kind. And so sometimes we did them in their home, or we did them by the poolside. I did one or two by a river. I did one or two on the beach. And then I had two very unusual requests I was not prepared for. I was asked if I could do two different services in a bar. I'm going to tell you, my Bible college training did not have a class on how do you do a memorial service in a bar, all right? But we did it. And God was not intimidated, and he showed up. There was a lot of comfort there. Some of it Southern, but a lot. Okay, for those of you who laughed, you know what I meant by that, but there was comfort there. But I can tell you that God already made the difference for Anthony, the one who we're here to recognize and honor. You see, during a previous health challenge that Anthony went through, he believed that God gave him a glimpse of view into heaven and what heaven would be like. Whether it was a dream or whether it was actual, it was a gift that God gave to him. It was a confirmation that faith in Jesus Christ is not wasted, and God is a keeper of his promises, that where we go when we leave this world is far better than what we have left behind. That is the reason for a promise in Psalm 23 that says, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of death. One other translation says, when I walk through the valley of the shadow of troubles, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. And God brought that comfort to Anthony at an earlier difficult moment, so when it came to this moment, it would be much easier. Not only for him, but as you hear his testimony, also for us today. God helped to reshape Anthony's perspective about life and death with that glimpse into what the future holds for us. And so Perspective is what I hope you and I will give God the opportunity to shape a little bit more for each of us. As we honor Anthony, it may give us a chance to rethink our perspective of life and the way we will live from this moment until our death. It might reshape our perspective of death itself, that it's not to be as fearful as we have often thought it to be, but the fact it leads us, it's a doorway to something far more grand than we've ever anticipated. And maybe there's somebody here who is unsure of what is on the other side of death, and I can't make you believe anything, but I can tell you this. Heaven sounds a lot better to me than hell, and life sounds a lot better to me than nothing. And so it certainly is worth our opportunity to explore and have some certainty about what our beliefs are. I know that Anthony had a few hobbies that he enjoyed. One of them was he liked to play the slots every now and then, all right? It wasn't anything that had a hold on him, all right? But it was just something, like shooting hoops for half an hour. He enjoyed pulling that one-armed bandit. Well, let me see if I can set perspective with a casino story. I've given the name Gloria to the person in this story. Gloria was on vacation, and she was playing the slot machine. It was her first time in a casino, and she wasn't quite sure how the machines functioned. "Excuse me," she said to the employee of the casino, how does this work? And the worker showed her how to insert a bill, hit the spin button. You could tell when I do this how old I am. Yeah. You now hit the button, and it operates the release handle. And then she asked the important question, well, where does the money come out? He smiled at her, motioned against the far wall, and said, usually at the ATM. Perspective shapes the way in which we approach our hobbies and/or our vices. You've already heard me mention butterflies. They are a focal point of today's service, for the Rodriguez family especially. You see, Gloria had asked Anthony, it's a question, I think I've got it pretty close. She can correct me if I'm wrong, but she asked him a question about if he could come back after death as one of God's creatures, what would it be? And his answer to her was, a butterfly. A butterfly. I came across a story the other day about caterpillar ugly and butterfly beautiful. And that's sort of a picture of us, BC and AD. Before we have any relationship with God, you and I struggle through this world with the guilt of our own foolish actions. The Bible calls it a word that we don't like in the 21st century very well. It's called sin. But sin is what separates us from God. And we were all born that way. We inherited it from our parents. And people always want me to define sin. Well, I'm not as bad a sinner as somebody else is. I didn't do this, this, and this. I've only done this, this, and this. And that's not as bad as this. And so we compare ourselves to somebody worse. But here's technically, from a biblical perspective, what sin is. It is independence from God. Anything and everything I do outside of God's will for my life, I am doing in opposition to Him, and that is what sin is. And so, as we go through life in that condition, we're a caterpillar. Jesus said to a very wise religious man one time who came to Jesus knowing that his religion wasn't doing him any good, and he came to Jesus in the middle of the night. His name happened to be Nicodemus. That is the original edition of Nick at Night, okay? So Nicodemus came to Jesus and said, what must I do to be saved, to be forgiven? And Jesus said, you must be born again. In other words, you must go from caterpillar to butterfly. Sin damages our life. Freedom and forgiveness makes life beautiful. That's the symbolism of the butterfly. Do you know how hard it is to find anything humorous about a butterfly? A butterfly is beautiful. A butterfly is fun to look at and think about. But I looked up just to sort of set a tone today. What is it? Can I find some butterfly humor? Do you know the only humor I found are jokes that kids tell? And I remembered one that I learned as an elementary school kid. Do you know why the boy threw a cube of butter out the kitchen window? Because he wanted to see butterfly. I remember that one. All right, it's corny, isn't it? Here's another one. What did the butterfly say to the shy caterpillar? You just need to come out of your shell. All right, only one more. We couldn't tolerate anymore. Why did the butterfly get kicked out of the flower shop? Because it was caught drinking on the job. All right. More serious nature. A man found a cocoon of a butterfly. One day, a small opening appeared in the cocoon. And the man was baffled as he sat and he watched the butterfly for hours struggle to try to force its body out of that little bitty hole. It seemed to stop making any progress, and it appears it had gotten as far as it could go and no further. So the man decided to help the butterfly. So he took a pair of tiny scissors and he snipped off the remaining of the cocoon. The butterfly then emerged very easily, but it had a swollen body and very small and shriveled wings. The man continued to watch the butterfly because he expected that at any moment the wings would enlarge and expand and support the body that would contract in time. But neither happened. In fact, the butterfly spent the rest of its life crawling around with a swollen body and shriveled wings. It was never able to fly. When the man in his kindness and haste did not understand was that the restricting cocoon and the struggle required to get out of the cocoon forced the fluids out of the body of the butterfly into its wings, and that's what enabled it to soar through life. God's way of forcing fluid from the body and into its wings was through the cocoon, through the struggle. Sometimes struggles are what we need in our life. God allows us to go through some challenges, not for the purpose of crippling us, but for the purpose of strengthening us and preparing us for the next challenge. Just as God gave to Anthony that glimpse of what his future would look like, he strengthened him for his final battle here. Well, perspective is important. It changes the way we see things, and I hope today there's some perspective that you will see so that you will see things better and clearer and more hopeful. And Anthony is the source of what will make that possible today. So let's jump in and talk about the reason why we are all here. Anthony was born on November the 12th, 1961. Do you know what day of the week that your husband was born on? Do not feel bad if you don't know. I've asked this question hundreds of times and most don't. That is a very good answer because it ends with Y. But actually, you're 100% correct. He was born on a Sunday, the Lord's Day. Dwight D. Eisenhower was president at the time of his birth, but on the preceding Tuesday before his birthday, John Kennedy was elected to become our next president. There were talking movies out when your dad was born, all right? He wasn't that old. In fact, the top movies that year were 101 Dalmatians, which I bet Rogue would love to watch even today. West Side Story, starring Natalie Wood. The Absent-Minded Professor with Fred McMurray. Elvis Presley was still at the top of his game and had a movie called Blue Hawaii. And Paul Newman was rising in fame, and he had his classic called The Hustler. Hit songs that year were Bobby Lewis singing Tossin' and Turnin', Patsy Cline singing I Fall to Pieces, Roy Orbison singing Crying, Chubby Checker singing Not the Twist. I know, that's what he's most known for. He did have one other hit song called Pony Time, all right? Connie Francis had Where the Boys Are, and Ray Charles had Hit the Road, Jack. Your husband shared his birthday with a rather broad group of interesting people. Grace Kelly shared his birthday of November the 12th, different year, but same month and day. Most of you remember Grace Kelly, right? The actress who became a princess when she married the Prince of Monaco. Then going to the other side of things, a very ugly man, both in his appearance and his actions. Charles Manson, all right, the cult leader, shared that birthday. Brighter side, Al Michaels, who probably announced All right, some of the football games that the Steelers played in shared that birthday. Sammy Sosa, the baseball player, and one of my favorites, the young lady who played Ziva David on NCIS, okay? She had that same birthday. His parents were Raul and Delia. His grandparents were very much involved in raising him, and he shared his parents with a brother and 3 sisters, Teresa, Michelle, Junior, and Barbara. Did I miss any of you? I got them all right? Oh, good. Anthony grew up in Fresno. He attended Daly Elementary School, Tenaya Junior High, and he graduated from Bullard High School in 1980. All right, so any of you here who went to his elementary school with him? You went to elementary school right there. All right, one gentleman. How many of you went to Tenaya with him? You went to, okay, another one over there. Man, I want your genes because you look a lot younger than the rest of us. Oh, you messed it up? Okay. That was your dad who went to Tenaya with him, right? I just say, man, I want that bloodline. How many of you went to Bullard High School with him? All right. Yeah, it's just like those Bullard folks not to show up. I'm sorry. I was a Hoover High Patriot, all right? So, all right, we got some Patriots here. Yeah. Yeah, it's just a lot earlier than you all went. After high school, Anthony attended Fresno City College, pursuing training in tech and auto shop programs. In 1983, Anthony was working at a Shell station near Keenes Canyon and Clovis Avenue. He often frequented the McDonald's that was nearby. Did you tell me that you worked at the drive-through window or you worked inside? You did both. So he was always looking to see where you were, and he would come over to, buy a meal. And it had nothing to do with the quality of the food. It had to do with the good looks of the employee. That was Gloria Santiago. Their first date was his birthday. And he went all out. He took her to Happy Steak that day, all right? Hey, you got to remember the times, all right? You got to remember, that was big. That was big in those days. They dated for a little over 3 years, and they were married on October 11th, 1986. Last October, they celebrated their 38th anniversary. Their marriage was blessed with a son and 2 daughters. Anthony Jr., or as we call AJ, dang, he's good looking, lives in North Lauderdale, Florida, temporarily anyway. The word is there's interest in moving to Texas for some bizarre reason. Marissa lives in Little Elm, Texas, and Jessica in Aubrey, Texas. And by the way, Gloria is now living in Aubrey. Side story, I did not know they had moved to Texas. I retired 2 years ago. They didn't know I had moved to Texas. I'm not there anymore, okay? My grandkids didn't like the fact I wasn't here, so I was only there for a little over a year. But we were 13 miles apart. 13 miles for that particular year. So God's got a great sense of humor. He has one grandchild, Rogue, who was up here, just a handsome dude. He's 4 years old, and he's got a granddaughter on the way, expected the end of March. Right now, we're going to change direction a little bit for a perspective that comes from the middle child, the oldest daughter, and the self-proclaimed daddy's favorite. Marissa, come on up. I think all of them are coming to support her to let her know that she's not the favorite.
All right. On behalf of the family, I'd like to thank you all for coming to celebrate my dad and the legacy he leaves behind. For those of you that don't know, my dad and I, we were very close. I would like to tease that I was his favorite, although he would never confirm or deny. He'd just sit there and smile. He wasn't just my father, he was my friend. His advice was a source of wisdom. His humor and his little dad sayings that didn't make any sense were a source of joy. And his presence was a blanket of comfort. My siblings and I knew we could call on him and turn to him for anything. and he would listen with an open heart without judgment. He was the keeper of secrets with the occasional, "Just don't tell mom," and he would act like he didn't know. My dad was an amazing man. He was not only a father to us, but also a father figure to the kids he coached, our childhood friends, our teammates, and our cousins. He was very patient, and he resembled a gentle giant. He would always be seen with a smile, cracking jokes, and laughing. My father wasn't just a provider, he was the rock upon which our family was built. He worked tirelessly up and down the state of California to ensure that we had everything we needed, often sacrificing his own comfort so we could have the opportunities that he didn't. Through his actions, my dad showed me what it means to live a life of kindness and to serve others selflessly. He showed me what it meant to be strong, not just in facing life's challenges, but in loving unconditionally. He was my role model, teaching me the value of hard work, integrity, and humility. Anytime he had to work on the cars, house, projects, renovations, or fix anything, I would be right there beside him, carefully watching his every move, learning, helping, listening to him sing along to the oldies, rock and roll, and make jokes. His love for his family was boundless. He gave so much of himself to make our lives better, often putting his own dreams aside so that we could chase ours. His sacrifices were silent but monumental, and they shaped me into the person I am today. As I stand here, we are overwhelmed with gratitude for having a father who loved everyone he befriended so deeply, lived so fully, and gave so generously. While my heart aches with his loss, I find comfort in knowing that his love and teachings will stay with me forever. I will miss our lunch dates. I will miss seeing your name come up on my phone when you call. Watching football games with you and sending each other funny TikTok videos. Thank you, Dad, for everything, for being my provider, my protector, my guide, and my best friend. I love you more than words can ever express. I will keep my promises I made to you and carry your beautiful spirit with me every day of my life. It's time to rest now, Dad. You are the strongest person I know. You were and always will be my hero. Thank you.
And I think it is appropriate to applaud at moments like this, a confirmation she did well. Marissa, you are an excellent writer. Excellent, thank you. Anthony, though he had auto shop at Fresno City College, he did not pursue a career, in that area, but he ended up in construction. And he did mostly drywall work, tapering and texturing. It's what makes our walls look beautiful. He was part of the local union 294. Any union guys here today? Looky there. You're better than Bullard, all right? You showed up today, so thank you for being here. He liked to travel some, and he and Gloria made frequent trips to Las Vegas to celebrate their anniversary, and I kind of think that coincided with one of his hobbies. And he also enjoyed a trip to Florida when his son moved there, and enjoyed going to the Florida Keys. His hobbies were fishing, dominoes, particularly the game Mexican Train, and playing the slots at WinStar in Oklahoma, just across the Texas border into Oklahoma. At one time, it was the largest casino in the country. It's beautiful, absolutely beautiful. It's owned by the Chickasaw Nation there. He liked to eat, and chili verde, if he could have his favorite meal, it would be chili verde, rice and beans. And guess what? At lunch today, you're going to get to enjoy his favorite meal, because I have smelled the chili verde that was delivered, rice and beans. He also enjoyed chocolate cake. I believe there's some chocolate cake over there, and there's some fudge, and there's chocolate chip cookies, so you could OD on chocolate today. His favorite restaurants, this was another interesting coincidence of our lives, was Castillo's. How many of you ate at the original Castillo's on Ventura? I lived on Orange Avenue when they opened that one, all right? I was in the 3rd grade when that opened, and that became our favorite restaurant. And then their son, John Castillo, was my Spanish teacher, also owned the one that was called Castillo's Restaurant in the Tower District. So lots of paths crossed in our lives. If he was watching TV, he liked Yellowstone. He watched fishing shows and a program called Living Off the Grid. His style of music was older rock and roll and country. Anybody want to take a guess what his favorite sports team might be? Yeah, he was obvious a Pittsburgh Steelers fan. This was the closest color I had to wear as a tie for the Pittsburgh Steelers. He was also a San Francisco Giant fan. And do you notice how close the colors are between the Steelers and the Giants? All right, there's a whole lot of similarities there. So I'm thinking he chose his sports teams based on color, all right, other than anything else. You've already heard he loved baseball, and he was engaged in coaching at Cary League, which, by the way, when I moved into the 5th grade, our house was just 3 blocks from Cary Park, where I grew up there as well. Anthony's early spiritual influence came from Catholic school. Somehow, several years ago, they found their way through Angela Monroy's family to New Hope, and he was willing to put up with me for a while. But then he decided Texas looked better. But I was so grateful for the opportunity to become acquainted. Some of his favorite scripture verses are Psalm 23, Psalm 73:26, and Matthew 5:4. And you might take a look at the butterfly in your hand, and on one of the inside wings, you will see one of those passages there. So you might look that up on your own later. When I asked for descriptive words that describe Anthony, here is what the family shared with me. He was honest. He was unforgettable. He was caring. He never spoke bad of others. He was selfless, had a good sense of humor, was friendly, kind, hardworking, sacrificed for his family, maintained good spirits even when he was sick and hurting. He was a gentleman, and as you heard Marissa say, some called him a gentle giant. During the reception time, there's a microphone that's going to be live over there, and if there are other words that come to your mind or short stories that reflect your relationship with Anthony, the family would love for you to step up to the mic and just tell a story for them. To give us a few different perspectives are some friends of the family. We're going to start with one, Olympia Montanez, all right, who has been here, I know, for the last few days helping get everything ready. So, Olympia, come on up. I don't get to do this often.
I know, thank you.
I'm always having to raise it for everybody.
I know. Anthony used to tease me about that too. Okay. Good morning. My name is Olympia, as you said, but as the family calls me, Oli, and some of you friends. I have another name. It's Gloria. People see me. I don't care where I'm at. Hey, Gloria. Hey, how's the... I'm not Gloria Rodriguez. And they shocked. It's like, or they see both of us together. Wait, there's 2 of you? Her colleagues at work. I don't know that. That was weird. They were calling, hey, Gloria, do you want to do this? I was like, well, Gloria's over there. And they're like, what? So I will take the name Gloria in honor. But there was one time when I was in a shop in River Park, and I heard this yell in this truck. I couldn't cross the street. And they go, hey, how's Anthony? I've never, ever been with Anthony. And I was like, who's this? Anthony. And I said, do you mean Anthony Rodriguez? And they go, yeah, how's he doing? And I'm like, I'm not Gloria, but he's fine. They're doing great. She goes, oh, I'm so sorry. Don't be sorry. It's okay. I'm used to it. She's my sister. Even her kids. I've been around the family since Marissa. Well, what brought our family together, my family and Gloria's family, Anthony, was when AJ and Clorinda were in kindergarten. So you're like 15 now, right? That's what brought our worlds together. I used to volunteer, and I used to help out and everything. So me and Gloria saw each other in the classrooms, or she was there picking them up, or we went on field trips together. We did a lot. So we got a bond with Gloria. I can't even remember when I met Anthony, because they have been a part of my life that it seems like they've been family forever. But at that time, Anthony was working out of town. So we would go, me and my kids would go a lot. My husband, he worked graveyard nights, different. So me and the kids would go over there, and all of our kids would get my kids and Gloria's kids grew up like cousins. There were times when Marissa or Jessie, bebe, that's what I had to tell her because she was so crazy with her questions and how come this and how come that and running. I'm like, baby, come over here. And they were like, Mom, is Oli our aunt? And I was like, was like, oh, how neat. And Gloria goes, well, yeah, you could call her your aunt. And she goes, well, we've known her forever. So it touched my heart that that's what they feel, because that's what I feel to them. And Anthony was the greatest person. His skills. I was fortunate to let him do some of my house too, which he was supposed to promise and do more. So he better come back. I know he's coming back. I'm gonna catch those butterflies. And I see what he does, and I'm like, wow, my God, how do you get that texture? That texture, it's different. And he goes, I've been doing this a long time. I said, oh, you got skills, okay. He even put my ironing board in the wall because they had one. I was like, I want that. And I go, Anthony, you're gonna have to come back when I move because you're gonna have to take that and put it in my new house. He goes, yeah, Oli. That was the way he was always opening his heart and his home to me. That's what I felt with Anthony always. He does have jokes, lots of jokes. He did like our music because we kind of grew up in the same era. And it's not often when your spouse gets along with your friend's spouse. Ours just connected. Our families, our husbands, our kids connected. And we grew up as family, which was great. They had their talkings and had fun. He liked our music, we always had. But I used to laugh saying, you don't even need a ladder, Anthony. That's messed up. He would just, oh yeah, look, and be done so fast. I was like, what? And my heart broke when they did tell me they were moving because I'm losing my friends. I can't get to them right away like I can get to them. When Anthony had his first episode, that's why I say thank you, Jesus, for giving him a second chance that we were able to enjoy him. So they were moving, and I did help them go get a trailer, and we were driving out of town to pick up the trailer, and by Valley Children's, the electricity side going on Avenue 7, 12, there's a building, a little house, and then the electricity thing. He goes, see that? I built that. And I was like, wow, Anthony, you did? That's so cool. At least every time I come by here, I think of Anthony. Look, there's Anthony. I was blessed. I couldn't get to Gloria right away because I don't fly. So God brought them back to Fresno one last time. And I tried to spend as many hours and days as I could with them because I knew my time was short. And we laughed and we cried. And I said, before I said, Anthony, I says, they always call me Gloria. I said, I don't think I look like Gloria. And he goes, yeah, you're short. I said, well, to you, everybody's tall, okay? I was like, really? But my last visit was the best. We even talked while Gloria was getting ready, because I was ready. And I got to spend those little moments with him and his grandson. He's like, oh, gosh. He jumps. I go, he jumps just like AJ did. I remember those days. And he goes, I know, but I'm older now. Rogue, be careful, be careful. And we had some great times. And I do believe, I know the family, the girls have seen feel Anthony's spirit. When I knew, I told Gloria I was going to speak every night. She goes, wow, you're going to have to get these bullets. You're going to have to put it in order. And I'm like, I can't do that. I said, okay, I'm going to start. Every night I would try to do that, and I'd start crying when I think of Anthony. Finally, the third time I did that, I said, okay, Anthony, I know what you mean. Speak from my heart. I know Anthony's with me. Because when I got the call that Anthony was going to be going, I had to compose myself, and I called them Marissa back. Can you put the phone to Anthony's ear? I thanked him for opening his heart, his family, and his home, and treating me like family. When he came down, I asked my husband, what did you guys talk about for 2 hours when we were gone? He goes, oh, a bunch of stuff. But he was asking the issues I was going through with my mom. And that's the type of person Anthony was. He cared, and he was concerned. So when I talked to Anthony, I said, please, if you see my mom, tell her I love her and I miss her. And to come to me in my dreams. Everybody has seen my mom but me. If you can do that, Anthony. And Anthony, I love you. And I will be there for your family. Even though I don't fly, I'll get there somehow. I'll get there somehow. After Christmas and New Year's, after he passed, we were at my daughter's house, and they weren't awake. So I usually went down to use her treadmill, because she says, Mom, get on the treadmill. And I listened to these spiritual songs that get me through when my mom passed. And there's one called Keep Your Eyes on Me from the movie The Shack. And when it gets too dark, when you can't cope, you can't see, you close your eyes and you think of Jesus. Well, I usually do that, and I see the Jesus from our church. I just close my eyes and see Jesus. This time, and I'm awake, I saw Jesus, and I saw my mom next to him. And I froze. I was still moving, like God kept me moving, but I was like, is that happening? I opened my eyes, and I'm like, and I closed my eyes again, and I saw my mom, and I thanked Jesus. Thank you, Jesus, and Mom, I love you. And I talked to Gloria, and I said, I know people have prayed. You'll see your mom in your dreams sometimes. You'll see your mom in your dreams. And I said, Gloria, this was a miracle Anthony did for me. He brought my mom to me when I was awake. She was right, and I know she went with God. She was very faithful. We came up with a lot of faith in our life. But I told Gloria, Anthony did that because he knew how much it meant to me. So I do believe in those butterflies. I'm not going to switch him. He'll probably fly away from me because he knows I'm going to collect them and keep them. But that's who Anthony and Gloria and the family. Thank you for opening your hearts to me and treating me like family, because you will be forever in our hearts. Anthony, too. And I will always be there for you guys. I love you guys. Thank you.
Olympia, I want to prepare you. You're going to need to get over your fear of flying. Because, there's a hymn we sing in church that talks about when we go to be with God, it goes like this, I'll fly away. So, all right, so get over that.
They're already concluding with my daughter what they're going to do.
Okay, all right. Another friend of the family is Lee Domingo. Lee, come on up and share your thoughts. Can't wait to hear him. And by the way, your husband has a really cool truck.
I'd like to thank the family for asking me to speak. I am one of many friends of Anthony. And as I look out, I see family and friends, people I don't know, maybe a couple I do. And we all come from different backgrounds and different times that we walked into their life, his life, as he walked into ours. The way that I met Anthony is when I used to live down the street from them. I would walk my dogs, Chloe and Tinkerbell, every morning. And according to Jessica, she used to tell me, Or she told me to this morning that every time I would walk the dogs, she always wanted to know what kind of dogs I had. One was a Yorkie, that was Chloe, and Tinkerbell was a long-haired Chihuahua. People keep thinking when they see her, Tinkerbell, that she's a puppy, but she's not. She's 15 years old, and she's just really, really tiny. But that was the connection that brought that brought them into my life. There were times when I had to go out of town after I got to know Gloria and Anthony, and they would find out that I needed somebody to watch my dogs, because sometimes I would go out for 3 or 4 days, and it's because I would help my pastor to go with him to drive him to his evangelistic crusade. Sometimes they were out of state. So sometimes I had to fly out, and then I had to drive back. And they took care of them like they were their own. And there was a picture that, I don't know who took it, but Anthony was sitting down, and Chloe was lying right next to him. And when I would, even after they left, when I would walk them, Chloe would always look over at their house, just waiting to see if they would come out. And she would wait. And when she knew they were going to come out, we ended up going. We started walking. But over time, she would see the house and she would walk by. But I would never forget their family and their dogs. I tried to figure out what I was going to write. And it took me a couple of weeks after praying and trying to read in my Bible or listen to a song, listen to other speakers. And I couldn't come up with anything. And just last week, God gave me this. And I believe that we all need to hear what God had put in my heart, because I believe this speaks to all of us, one way or the other. And it's about Anthony and what he means to me. And I'm sure you will see and you will hear that part of Anthony is touching you as well. His name means priceless. Anthony was a priceless person that God had put into all of our lives. It's like that special diamond that there's only one that's cut a certain way, that is so valuable that we would give everything to buy it. I'm sure that those of you out there that knew him like I did, his friendship was priceless. He was a great friend to me, and especially to my girls, Chloe and Tinkerbell. Those were my dogs, but I believe they became his too as they got to know him. I remember when we would walk by their home, Gloria and Anthony's, they would bark until he would come over and pet them. I believe it was their highlight of their walk. Every time we walk by, Chloe looks over at their old house, and she sees to see if they're going to come out. After a while, no one comes out. She keeps walking. Anthony had that kind of effect, I'm sure, on people he met. Always ready to say hi. I remember when they first dog sat for me, I came to pick them up, but they didn't want to come with me. I guess Gloria and Anthony put something in their food and probably spoiled them with treats. Anthony was my close friend, closer than some I had known for years. I had only known him and Gloria about 5 to 7 years, but it seemed longer. We would talk about sports, him with his Pittsburgh Steelers and me the Rams. I know the Steelers always had the Rams number. But friends, we would stay. I remember me and him and Glory went to see a movie. Can't remember what we saw, but afterwards we saw a life-size cutout of Scooby-Doo. The middle picture on top of the piano, you'll see it. When I saw it, I laughed because it brought back memories. So we got next to it. In fact, we got inside it, and we knelt down and took a picture. 2 grown men acting like kids. We thought we had met a real-life celebrity. But that's what friends do. Get together and have fun and laugh. He was that kind of friend to me. The Bible describes a friend as someone who is loyal, helpful, loving during difficult times, someone who's willing to sacrifice themselves for their friends, just like the men and women of our armed forces. But one more trait about Anthony: he was my brother. We became brothers over time. We trusted each other and was there when we needed help or just talk. Rio, Hebrew meaning of brother, companion, neighbor. Philios, Greek meaning friend, someone dearly loved, implies close relationship, characterized by mutual affection and care. Proverbs 18:24 says, a friend who sticks closer than a brother. That was Anthony. This morning when I got up, I read my devotion, and this devotion said, gather all the food of those good years that are coming and store up grain. In the book of Genesis, it talks about the famine that was going to hit Egypt. But Joseph at the time told Pharaoh to collect 1/5 of the produce of the land of Egypt in the 7 plentiful years. In other words, before the famine hit, there were 7 plentiful years in Egypt. And let them gather all the food of those years, good years that are coming. Store up grain then that the food shall have a reserve for the land, and for the 7 years of famine which shall be in Egypt, that the land may not perish during the famine. There are 2 important lessons for us in this story. Don't let your bad times eat your good ones. What is the best way to do that? By standing on the Word of God during times of discouragement, difficulty, being confident of this very thing, that he who begun a good work in you will complete it until the day of Jesus Christ. When Anthony went home to be with the Lord, his work was complete. Just like when he would work on his house or projects, he could step back and he could look at it and say, it's done. The other one is, don't just enjoy your good times. Glean from them the wisdom, the strength, the strategies, relationships, and resources that will sustain you in bad time. Paul writes, we can rejoice too when we run into problems and trials, for we know that they help us develop endurance, and endurance develops character, strength of character. But when God blesses you, don't just store it up. Share it with others. Practice the laws, I can't remember this word, that Jesus taught. Give and it will be given to you. For with the same measure that you use, it will be measured back to you. What you cling to for your selfish purposes, you will eventually lose. But when you give to bless others, God has promised to reward you both now and in eternity. That's what Anthony's friendship means to me. You know, and the memories. We need to look back and remember how he touched our lives and share them with Gloria and the kids, and maybe friends that you know that knew him, and take time to reminisce and ask yourself, what did he teach me? You know, what did I learn from him? You know, Jesus was the greatest teacher of all times, and he said to love one another as I have loved you. And no greater love than this, than a man would lay down his life for his friends. Jesus calls all of us friends. But it's up to you to decide if you want to make him that personal friend of yours. Sometimes we don't always understand why God allows difficult things to come our way. But just like he talked about the butterfly who had to struggle in order to be able to live a fruitful life. The struggles, the tragedies, and the losses that we go through teach us that down the road there's some more is going to come, but we will be able to handle it the next time it comes around. But we're not by ourselves. Jesus is with us. God is standing next to us. And, you know, we have family, we have friends that he put into our lives that's going to be there for us. So I just want to say thank you for allowing me to speak, to let you know how I've been feeling. And that I think about you guys often. And God bless you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Good thoughts. One last person is going to come share the perspective of friendship. His name is Anthony Wayne Richardson. He was a family, and I understand the next door neighbor. You know how they described you to me? As Wilson from Home Improvement. Yeah, now for you. Yeah, you're a little taller than I am.
A little bit, but not that much. To God be the glory. This wonderful day. This is a beautiful day. You know, when Gloria asked me to speak, I wanted to say no. As I'm sure many of you would think, to say no, because you knew how difficult it would be, and it's difficult. As Lee was just saying, Anthony, he wasn't a neighbor. I've had many neighbors. Anthony was my buddy. Anthony was my friend. We got together over the smallest little things, taking the garbage out in the mornings. And my name being Anthony as well, but everyone calls me Wayne, and his name being Anthony. So it was always, hey, good morning, Aunt. Hey, good morning, Aunt. I loved him. I loved him dearly. What's a good neighbor? We all have neighbors. Every one of us have a neighbor. But a good neighbor, do all of us have that? And I would dare to say, no, we don't all have that, because I went many, many years before I finally got a good neighbor. A good neighbor to me is one that you would trust. I could give him the keys to my house and say, hey, Anthony, can you put my mail in my house for me? He would do that. I would say, Anthony, I'm going out of town for a week or two. Can you water my lawn for me? No problem. He was that kind of a guy, stand up all the time. Anthony, I didn't even have to tell him ask him to do certain things. A lot of things, I was just over there trying to build a room onto my house, or put up something in the backyard, or doing some work in my garage, and he would see me, and he would just come over and jump right in. And I really did appreciate him jumping right in, because most of the time I didn't know what I was doing. And he being in construction, my dad was a building contractor, but the genes didn't flow down, okay? I tried and I failed many, many times, but Anthony always knew what to do. And that height thing that was being said about him being tall, oh, that reach helped a heck of a lot. And in the painting and the stucco, yes, it does help to have that tall person there, cutting branches from trees, things like that. By the same token, I was in the hospital for like 3.5 weeks, almost a month, and Anthony came over and mowed my lawn. He mowed my lawn. I did the same for him too when he was in the hospital. I mowed his lawn. He's that kind of guy that you just want to do things for. He had a truck. I didn't have a truck. I had a car. And I would always borrow his truck. I'd ask him, hey, Aunt, can I borrow your truck to go pick up whatever it is, some wood or whatever? And no problem. So when I finally got a truck, I was so happy when you guys came back to town and you didn't have a vehicle, and how many people would loan out their brand new truck to someone? I loaned him my brand new truck because I loved him and Gloria that much, and I knew he wasn't going to mess it up anyway. He's a good guy. Anthony was a good guy. I look out here and I see all the friends that showed up today for him. And I'm sure each and every one of us have stories about Anthony and his life. I probably knew him less than a few of you, less time than a few of you. But in the time that I did know him, I found him to be a great stand-up person and man. And when I say man, I mean that in the true sense of the word. Anthony was a man. I think us men in here knew what a man is. We recognize a man when we see a man. A man usually is someone that has those attributes that we don't have. I wish I could be more like him, that type of person. And Anthony, there were many things about him. He was a great father, a wonderful dad. AJ, Marissa, Jessica, you guys had a man for a daddy, a man, a real man. Gloria, you had a real man for a husband. He was scared of you, though. Anthony would be, I'm going to tell this this happened more than once, actually. Anthony loved to come over and help me when I was in the backyard working or whatever. And Gloria was still working, and she was still working, and she would call him and say, did you do whatever it was that he was instructed to do that morning? Of course he didn't do it yet, but he was going to do it before she got home. Well, thank goodness. A lot of times she would call and check on him to make sure he's okay, so she would give away that she was on her way home. And Anthony and I would be in the backyard sitting down having a little brewski. And it always came out of his mouth, I got to go. Gloria's on her way home. Gloria's on her way home. And I thought, Anthony's not a real man. A real man would say, woman, come on home. I'm over here with my best neighbor. We're sitting up having a beer and whatever. But no, he knew where to cut the, yeah. And he would go home and he would take care of his house, though. Anthony had dogs. Gloria, Anthony, AJ, all of you guys had dogs. As a matter of fact, each one of them had a dog, as I recall. Each one had a dog. There wasn't just 1 or 2 or 3 dogs. And every time after they got to know me, I guess I became comfortable with the dogs too, because the dogs would always bark initially when I first moved in. But after a while, they didn't bark at me. They barked at everybody else that came by, but not at me. And so they trusted me to take care of the dogs. And when they went on their jaunts to Vegas or up to Table Mountain, wherever it was, and they stayed a few days or whatever, they would, give me the pleasure of handling the dogs. And they got to know me and they got to like me. The one with the two eyes, two different colors, what is it? Kara? Yeah, Kara. She liked me, but the other ones, they didn't like her because what happened is they would all know that I was coming over to feed them in the evenings when I got home from work or whatever. And so they would all get kind of hyper and they would quiet down, and I would open up the gate and I'd walk in. Well, Kara was the one who would always want to bark at me and stand up to me. I knew she wasn't going to bite. I knew that. But she was always there to put a little bit of fear in me. The other ones didn't like that about her. Oh, no. They were like saying, no, get over it. He's here to feed us. He's here to take care of us. So after a while, they all got to know me. And I miss that part of not having you guys as neighbors right now. When you moved away, tears came out of my eye the day you moved. I have to admit that, because I knew some of my best friends were moving away. I recall you guys went on a trip, and one time you went across the country. I don't know where you were going, but Anthony, I got this call from Anthony, and he says, "Hey, guess where I am?" I said, "Where?" He says, "I'm in this town called Okmulgee, Oklahoma, where all of my people are from." I said, "What the heck? Did you get lost?" There's no reason to go to Okmulgee, Oklahoma. But he said, "No, we're in Okmulgee, Oklahoma." Fireworks, the fireworks, 4th of July. We always shared our fireworks with one another, go out front. I miss those dearly. Those times, they were just fun. The kids were smaller, and we shared the fireworks. We shared the food, whatever we had, out front, and we'd laugh at the neighbors who were over there violating the law, shooting those things about 100 and something feet up in the air. But we just laugh at them. But those were good times. But there was one time in my life, my and my wife's life, that tragedy struck us dearly. And Anthony and Gloria were there for us. It was when my son, who was 24 years old, first he came up missing, then he came up deceased. And it was Gloria who put out the flyers for us. Thank you very much for that. And helped us get through a real difficult time of losing our child. And, with the words that were said by her and Anthony and the comfort that they gave us at that time, we truly do think about it. I saw the flyer that you put out on TC just the other day. I have it in the closet, and because I don't want to ever lose it. And I thought about you guys, and I thought about Aunt and how you guys, helped us through a very hard time emotionally. I thank you guys for that. Your family is a great family. People need to be more like this family. And they've had their ups and downs. I was privy to hearing about it. And that's okay. That's okay. We all have ups and downs, and sharing, let's say, a problem with a neighbor who is a friend and allowing me to comfort them at different times, because I've already raised a family to the point where theirs were. So Anthony, and especially Anthony, he did trust me in the words I would give him to maybe say to one of his children to help them get through whatever problem they're getting through. And I appreciate that. But speaking of his children once again, he was proud of you. He was proud of you. He was very, very proud of you guys. He would always brag about you. And that's okay. That's what you have children for. We all want to have children to brag about. That's why we raise them. so they can be bragged about. I think, Marissa, you were homecoming queen once upon a time at Hoover High School. I think the same night, AJ was the king, wasn't he, or whatever you call it? And he was also the star football player, the quarterback at that time. Yeah. And Jessie, she was just a prize athlete, especially in baseball, softball. And also, let me tell you what else this young lady can do. She can carry rocks in the wheelbarrows from the front yard to my backyard. How many times? I don't know. Maybe 20 times. I'm not kidding you. I said, "Oh, that's okay, Jessie. I got it. I can do it, Wayne." Knock yourself out, kid. And she did. She did. Yeah, but like I said, your dad was very, very proud of each and every one of you. And with last words about Anthony, AJ called me the day that Anthony passed. It was in the daytime. I don't know what, 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. And I think I recall his words being something about, we don't know if Dad has 20 minutes or 20 hours left. And, that just melted my heart right there. Then he asked me, "Do you want to speak to him?" Now, I think many of us would, put in my shoes at that particular time, would think like I thought. No, I don't want to speak to him because I don't want to say goodbye. I don't want to say goodbye. But I couldn't say that. I could not say, no, I don't want to speak to him. That would be just a terrible, wrong thing to do. I love this man. Anyway, and I'm on the phone. I'm talking to him. They put the phone up to his ear, and he can hear me. And I said, "I love you," just like that. And I could hear him moan something back to me. And I took it as, "I love you too." Of which Gloria did tell me 2 days later or so that after we got off the phone, Anthony did say that, "I love that man." That was your words to me, which of course broke me into tears again. But I love that man. And with that, I'm gonna leave and go take my seat. But I do truly appreciate you allowing me to get up and speak about a person that really has touched my life and touched my family's life, and as your whole family has. We're blessed to have met you. Our friendship will continue. Anthony's my buddy, will always be my buddy. I appreciate him, I love him. God bless each and every one of you. And you guys have to be safe on your way back to Texas or wherever you're going to end up being, okay? Love you guys. Thank you.
Wayne, I've been to Okmulgee. Oh, all of my family was from Oklahoma. Places like Dibble, Featherston, McAllister. Yeah. As Wayne talked about, it's not often you have great neighbors, but as he described all of that, it prompts another question, and that is, what kind of neighbor are we? And obviously the two of them reciprocated what it meant to be that kind of neighbor. One last perspective, and that is the families prepared a pictorial tribute. Somebody once said a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, you're in store for about 1 million of them as we look at a series of pictures come across on the screen, backed up by some of his favorite music. But what's most fun about this is to notice the different clothing styles and hairstyles throughout the year. So let's sit back, watch, and enjoy. Look at each one of the screens.
Wrong!
I got you.
When I get where on the far side of the sky. The first thing that I'm gonna do is spread my wings and fly. I'm gonna land beside a lion and run my fingers through his mane. Or I might find out what it's like to ride a drop of rain. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will shed the sins and struggles I have carried all these years, and I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. I'm gonna walk with my granddaddy, and he'll match me step for step. And I'll tell him how I've missed him every minute since he left. And then I'll hug his neck. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will shed the sins and struggles I have carried all these years, and I'll leave my heart wide open. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, don't cry for me down here. So much pain and so much darkness in this world we stumble through. All these questions I can't answer, and so much work to do. But when I get where I'm going, and I see my Maker's face, I'll stand forever in the light of His amazing grace. Yeah, when I get where I'm going, there'll be only happy tears. I will love and have no fear. Yeah, when I get where I'm
It's medallic time, fool.
If you're reading this, and my mama's sitting there, looks like I only got a one-way ticket over here. I sure wish I could give you one more kiss. And war was just a game we played when we were kids. Well, I'm laying down my gun, hanging up my boots. I'm up here with God, and we're both watching over you. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul, it's where my mama always prayed that it would go. And if you're you're reading this, I'm already home. If you're reading this halfway around the world, I won't be there to see the birth of our little girl. I hope she looks like you. I hope she fights like me. Stands up for the innocent and the weak. I'm laying down my gun, hanging up my boots. Tell Dad I don't regret that I followed in his shoes. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul is where my mom always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, I'm already home. If you're reading this, there's gonna come a day when you move on and find someone else, and that's okay. Just remember this, I'm in a better place, where soldiers live in peace and angels sing amazing grace. So lay me down in that open field out on the edge of town. And oh, my soul is where my mom always prayed that it would go. If you're reading this, if you're reading this, I'm already home.
When we get to the end of our lives together,
The house we had, the cars we drove, the things we possessed won't matter. What will matter is that I had you and you had me.
Well done, family. Well done. Great job. All right, if this were a Pittsburgh Steelers football game, we are now late in the fourth quarter and we are approaching the 2-minute warning. We have had perspectives, reflections from friends and from family and from butterflies. And the last perspective that we're going to close out with is a little perspective that comes out of God's Word. There was an old Italian who lived in New Jersey, and he wanted to plant his annual tomato garden, but it had now become difficult work because of his age, and the ground seemed to be getting harder. His only son, Vincent, used to help him, but Vincent was now in prison, and the old man wrote a letter to his son and described his problem. Dear Vincent, I'm feeling pretty sad today. Looks like I won't be able to plant my tomato garden like the old days. I'm getting too old to dig up the family plot. I know if you were here, my troubles would be over. You'd be happy to dig the ground for me like the old days. Love, Papa. A couple of days later, the father received a letter from his son. Dear Pop, don't dig up the garden. That's where I buried the bodies. Love, Vinny. The next morning at 4 a.m., FBI agents and local police arrived at the old man's house. They dug up the entire garden area, and they didn't find any bodies. They apologized to the old man and left, and the same day, he received a second letter from his son. Dear Pop, go ahead and plant the tomatoes now, best I could do under the circumstances. I love you, Vinny. I love that attitude that says, in spite of the circumstances, there is something that can be done. That is what Psalm 23 is all about. The psalm written by one as a boy who was a shepherd, but written in the late stages of his life after he had become a king. And he said these words, and I think you probably know them. The Lord is my, I shall not. He makes me to lie down in He leads me beside. He restores my soul. He guides me along the paths of righteousness for his same name's sake. And even though I walk through the valley of I will, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of mine enemies, and you anoint my head with oil, and my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, still following him, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This brief song, composed by a former shepherd who became a king, has endured itself to people throughout many circumstances of life. To the soldier facing a battle and his possible death, he would quote this psalm. To the grieving widow wondering what she will do next. To the guilty wanderer looking for forgiveness and direction. To the destitute and the forgotten. To the depressed and the jobless. To the prison inmate and the persecuted. To the prodigal and the orphan. God says, I want to be your shepherd. A guy by the name of Morris Pink, who when I found this was 90 years old. He had served in the British Army during World War II, and during that conflict, he was ditched in the open sea on 2 different occasions when Japanese forces sunk the ship that he was traveling on. Maurice described the first dunking, as he put it. He said, I was a 19-year-old soldier aboard the battle cruiser Repulse when 5 torpedoes struck on December the 10th, 1941. This was the British Pearl Harbor. 3 days after the attack on American naval forces in Hawaii, the Japanese launched an attack and a raid on British ships. More than 800 British sailors perished in those attacks, and Maurice's ship, the Repulse, sank in 7 minutes. Maurice, who played the cornet with the Royal Marine Band, was in the transmitting station 3 decks below the main level, talking on the phone. The explosion from those torpedoes threw him across the room and into the bulkhead. The lights went off and he was trapped. Debris in the explosion blocked exits and stairways, and it appeared he had no escape. The ship was sinking rapidly, and Maurice struggled to find a way out. He heard the captain's voice over the speakers, all hands on deck, prepare to abandon ship. May God be with each of you. Arriving at the edge of the deck, Maurice stripped off all of his clothes, jumped into the lukewarm waters of the South China Sea. No life vest, area infested with sharks. Maurice told one pastor that he was naked, not a stitch on. He was disoriented, unsure which way to swim. If he got too close to the sinking ship, he'd be pulled under by the vortex as it went down. If he got beyond the oil-slicked waters, the sharks were looking for prey, and he began to panic. At that moment, that long ago memorized words that he learned at his mother's kneecap of Psalm 23 flooded his mind. And he began to quote those words. And he said, they kept my head above water. Here is what Maurice wrote about his experience after he got back to dry ground. He said, there are times in our life when things don't go right and you feel all alone. That happened on December 10th when I was on the cruiser. We were attacked by the Air Force, which resulted in both ships being sunk. I found myself alone in the water, not able to see anyone else. And the 23rd song came to my head, and I realized I am not alone. I had a shepherd because the Lord was my shepherd. And because of that, even in these cold waters, I don't want. I was not in green pastures, but I was in oily waters, but he restored my soul. Even though I was walking or swimming in the shadow of death, I was not afraid because he was with me. His rod and his staff did not ring a bell with me until voices above me were shouting. And I looked up, and there was a big destroyer alongside of me, the Electra, with nets over the side, which allowed me to climb up to safety. That was my rod and staff that day. I didn't have a table set before me, but I did get a cup of the ship's kai, cocoa. I had hot chocolate. Since that day, goodness and mercy have followed me all the days of my life. And when I think back to that day, I wonder what would have happened if I had died. But there again, Psalm 23 answers the question. I would dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Amen. The main message I have for you today is this. Your father and your husband, he is not dead. He is alive. He is absent at this moment from your presence, but he is more alive today than he has ever been, and death will never, ever touch him again. When we think of Psalm 23, we don't often think about where it's located in the Bible. We just quote Psalm 23. But I know you'll find this next statement quite profound. Psalm 23 is found right between Psalm 22 and Psalm 24. Did you know that? But do you have any idea what's in either one of those Psalms? Quite often we don't. But here's the good news. They're called a trilogy of Psalms. All three of them, 22, 23, and 24, are messianic Psalms. In other words, they were written hundreds of years before the birth of the one to whom they're talking about. They were prophetic in nature. Just as your husband got a glimpse of what heaven would be like in his future, David got a glimpse of the past, the present, and the future as he assembled Psalm 22, Psalm 23, Psalm 24. Psalm 22 deals with our past, Psalm 23 deals with our present, and Psalm 24 deals with our future. And therein takes care of all of our problems, whether they're behind us, around us, or in front of us. You see, tension comes in three tenses. We worry about the mistakes of our past, we are anxious about our troubles today, and we are apprehensive about the uncertainty of tomorrow. So these three Psalms are ideal for us to know something about in life. Psalm 22 is one of the most momentous prophetic chapters in the Old Testament. It was penned 1,000 years before Jesus was crucified, and it gives us the very words that Jesus would say from the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Written 1,000 years before Jesus said those as he hung on that cross. Because Jesus was forsaken, you and I are forgiven. Because Jesus was beaten, you and I have our sins healed. Because we are thirsty, he satisfies us with the water of life. Because he died, we have an eternal home in heaven. No matter the regrets of the past, Psalm 22 takes care of us. Psalm 23 takes care of today. Do you notice that whole psalm is written in present tense? The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down. That's right now in green pastures. When I walk through the valley of the shadow, it's all present tense. From our birth to our death, the shepherd to walk with us. In Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and all of its fullness. Lift up your heads, O you gates, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors. The King of glory is showing up. That's our future. God has prepared for us a place in heaven, and if we don't die before he comes, he's coming back to usher us home. That is the future. All our enemies are defeated, all of our problems are temporary, and all of our blessings are eternal. That is what these three Psalms offer to us. Our shepherd holds us safely. He alone takes care of the past, the present, and the future. So the question is this, and it's a great day for you to ask it of yourselves. Do you know the shepherd? You see, Jesus described himself during his earthly ministry here as, I am the good shepherd, but not all the sheep hear my voice. Not all of the sheep are in my pasture. It doesn't happen because you're born in the United States. It doesn't happen because you attend a Baptist church, a Catholic church, a Protestant church of any kind. It happens when you and I say yes to the invitation of the shepherd. He opens the gate and says, I'd love you to come in and have a relationship with me. And you can do that anywhere at any time. Let me close with this one last story. I've been told, and I've researched it, that the story is true. This goes back to the early 1900s, the height of the early days of Hollywood. And they would throw these big parties. And there was a gentleman down there who wasn't quite good enough to make the big screen, but he was a good actor. He was invited to their parties to perform, to entertain them. And so at the end of one of these big parties down there, this gentleman would go on stage, and he had a great memory, and he would do pieces of Shakespeare. He would do some of the famous poetry of the time, and he would stand on a little stage, and he would recite it, and he would act it out, a one-person short play, and they loved it, and they would applaud. Sometimes he would take requests from the audience. At the end of one such festivity, he said, "Folks, I'm going to take one last request." Well, there was an old gentleman sitting on the front row of that audience, and he raised his cane. And he said, "Sir, would you make an old man happy?" He said, "I'm a retired pastor, and nothing warms my heart as hearing a good reading of the 23rd Psalm. Do you know it?" This thespian was a little insulted. "Well, of course I know the 23rd Psalm. I'll make you a deal, old man. After I recite it, I would like you to come up on stage, and I would like for you to quote it from memory." The old pastor said, I'll try. And so this thespian left his performance, the best performance, for the last one. "The Lord is my shepherd." He put the right emphasis on each word. He put the pregnant pauses in all the right places. And by the time he got to "surely goodness and mercy," the audience was on their feet. "I will dwell in the house," and it broke out in applause. He quieted him down. He said, "Please sit. Top that, old man." He was a bit arrogant. The old gentleman pushed his way up on his cane and ambled his way up on the 2 steps and got in the center stage. He said, I can't do it like that. My memory is not as good, and my speech is not as strong, but I shall try." The Lord, I remember the day I made him my shepherd. And ever since then, I haven't needed a thing. I've been through the valley of the shadows many, many times. And I'm pretty sure I'm about to go through it one last time. But I'm not afraid anymore. God has gotten me past some enemies. And I'm so very grateful for his goodness and his mercy. And I got to tell you, I cannot wait to dwell in my Father's house forever and ever. And he worked his way down the steps, and he sat down. Unlike the thespian, he was not met with a standing ovation or cheers or applause. The actor had been standing at the back of the stage, and after a few seconds, he worked his way out. And he wiped his cheeks, and he looked out at the audience, and he said, "I'm glad to see many of you have the same problem that I do." And he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, do you want to know the difference between my performance of the 23rd Psalm and that fine gentleman's quotation?" He said, "I will tell you the difference. I know the Psalm. That man, he knows the shepherd. And that makes all the difference in the world. You can know all the Bible you want to, but if you've never invited Jesus Christ into your life, you don't know the shepherd. And he's knocking at your door. That's the way the book of Revelation ends for us. I stand at the door and knock, and anyone who will open the door for me, I will come in, and I will have fellowship with them for the rest of their days. And you can do that anywhere at any time. In a pew at the end of a memorial service, around a round table enjoying a Cheerly Verde. You could do it in your car on the way home, but if you're driving, don't pray with your eyes closed. Keep them wide open, all right? But Jesus will hear your prayer. Lord Jesus, thank you for forgiving me of my sin. Come live in my life. And just like that, he'll do it. He could even do it right now as we pray. Would you join with me as we pray? Our Father, I am so grateful, first and foremost, for your Son, the Lord Jesus. I'm grateful for his willingness to depart from the comforts and the adoration of heaven, and he was willing to take time out of eternity and spend it here with us. He was willing to experience the difficulties and the challenges of a sin-stained world. And then he was willing to do for us what we could not do for ourselves, and he was willing to wipe away that stain of sin in our lives, offer us forgiveness, and to let us know that from that moment on, every moment of every day, he would live within us, and he's prepared to do any and everything that we will allow him to do in and through our lives. And so because of that reality, we can come to a service like today where we're remembering Anthony. And though we are sad because of his absence, just like a neighbor was sad when his friends and neighbors moved from California to Texas and they were going to be absent from his presence, that is all that has happened with Anthony today. He is out of our presence and he is in your neighborhood. He is in your home. And that gives us hope. So I'm grateful for that on a day like today. And then as we reflect on Anthony's life, it gives us opportunity to think about our own lives and the way we will live from this moment until our death. And it prepares us, it allows us to prepare for when our death comes, so that death doesn't have the last word, but life does. So thank you, Father, for hearing the cries of our heart, for any man or woman, boy or girl who may say, you know, I know about God, but I don't know the shepherd personally, and invite you into their heart right now. Thank you for hearing that prayer, and thank you for your promise that you will answer it. And last of all today, I'm grateful, Father, I can commend this wife and this son and these two daughters, brother and sisters. I can commit their needs of care and comfort along with their friends, that you will keep your promise of being the God of all comfort. You'll do it today. You'll do it tomorrow. You'll do it next week. For that, we give you thanks and praise in Christ's name. Amen. This is going to conclude our service here in the sanctuary, but this does not conclude your time with the family. I'm going to invite the family, those of you up here on the front row, I'm going to invite you to stand right now and to grab your things and to head on out. Actually, would you do me a favor and open that set of doors for them? I'm going to invite the family. You can go out those set of doors, and you can work your way out in front of the fountain, or if you choose to, all the way to the reception area. And your friends will greet you out there or over at the reception area. And I'm going to give you a head start to head out there so you can get ready to do that. So if you're part of the immediate family, brothers or sisters, please just go right out those two doors. To the rest of you, let me give you some direction. This beautiful display was all done by this family. They came yesterday and they just did an incredible job at it. So when you leave, please take the opportunity to come by here. You can head out those doors. If you've already done that, you can head out the front door of the church. Both sidewalks, where it's the middle sidewalk or the front sidewalk, they both go north. That's that direction. They will take you to a big gray building, and the doors will be open. That is where the reception is. And the family will greet you. If they're not out front, they'll greet you over there. But please come by and look at this. The guest book, which had a place for memories or thoughts, it will be over in the reception area on a table. And you can go by any time and add your additional thoughts or add your names if you didn't get to do that when you arrive. There is a ladies' restroom on my left and a men's on my right here, and there are restrooms in the reception area. We call that building the barn, but it does have indoor plumbing, okay? So there is a set of restrooms over there. Please don't be shy. The servers are prepared to wait on you. Go ahead and pick up a plate. Go through the line. There's plenty of seating for everyone. There's a dessert table. You can go get dessert anytime you are ready. And if the family is ready for food, we're going to give them one privilege today. they can crowd in front of you whenever they're ready to. Okay, is that a fair deal? Thank you so much for being here today. God bless you. You are dismissed to head on over to the reception area. If you didn't get a butterfly, please pick one of those up.